Thank you very much for that introduction. I never like it to be fully read, but you did it so beautifully, so I could sit comfortably while you did it. I never made it to my master's graduation ceremony, so I'm very delighted to finally wear the master's gown today and share a bit of my story with you. I always get a little bit uncomfortable when people say, come and do an inspirational speech, because I don't know that I'm a motivational speaker. I believe in speaking truth to power. And for those who are ready to have honest reflections with themselves, it often takes them a long way further in their careers. My entrepreneurship journey started in 2005 when I graduated with my business science degree from UCT. With my fellow classmates, we launched Yego. My fellow classmates were also in my computer science class. And Yego was essentially predecessors to what you guys now use as WhatsApp and Viber, so mobile voice over IP. If you can remember back in 2006, before Android, before iPhone, when your best phone was your Windows mobile phones and your Nokia E-series phones. I see some heads, yeah, that's very distant past. And as students, we never had enough money to make phone calls, so we'd always send each other, please call me. One please call me would mean we're meeting at 5 o'clock, and two please call me means you're changing it to 6 o'clock. And we really thought that there had to be a better way to do life. And with the advent of technology and the internet, we thought we could build something in that direction. So the power of the internet for me has really displayed itself in my life, because a group of young students sitting in a little apartment in Cape Town were able to build world-class technology at a time where this technology was just emerging worldwide. We taught ourselves everything that we needed to know about how to build the software, how to run a business online. We literally Googled our way to success. Through the knowledge and expertise we built through this first business, it allowed us to expand our influence. We didn't have any social or financial capital starting out, but by virtue of the fact that we could prove that we were good at one thing in the world, it set us on an amazing journey and gave us so much credibility. By the time we launched in February of 2007, there were just 3 companies globally with similar technologies that had launched, one in Israel and one in the UK, with far, far more funding. And we were managing to do this sitting around a dining room table in a little apartment with ADSL. It's not like the American stories. We didn't have garages. Such is the leveling and inclusive power of the internet, that a group of bright-eyed students could achieve this with such limited resources. A local operator bought Yego in early 2009, 2010, and it was this formative experience that informs my view of the world today. My most recent company, Rekindle Learning, is still in the tech space, and you heard a bit about that, but really around how do we bring the benefits of technology to learning and education. To the graduates that we're here to honor, almost 15 years ago, I was in your shoes. In December of 2005, I was a 22-year-old graduate of a business science, computer science degree from UCT. Less than 8 years later, I was featured on the cover of Forbes Africa alongside Wendy Ackerman of Pick n Pay as a symbol of the next generation of African entrepreneurs changing how things appear in technology on the continent. I've had an extraordinary journey, and no one is more surprised than me. I still ask myself, how in the world did this all happen? In trying to understand the purpose of my story, the relevance of my journey, I've been drawn to some simple truths. That the way we understand how value and success is created in the world today is changing fundamentally. It is no longer about having something that nobody else has, but it is more about knowing who you are, what you have, what you want to contribute, and using that to your advantage. It's about tapping into your internal wisdom. It's about the awareness to see and follow your curiosities. The things that other people may think are mundane or a fact of life or irrelevant, those are the things that may well be a source of value for your life. All I have ever tried to do was to follow the rhythm of my own soul. And I had no idea it would take me so far. I believe that greater self-awareness has been quintessential to everything I've been able to achieve. Because you see, innovation, entrepreneurship, business, leadership, these are not things that you acquire from an external source. Personal mastery is about continually expanding one's ability to create the results in life that we truly seek. Our society teaches us to spend a lot of time, and in your times with social media, it's even harder. But our society teaches us to spend a lot of time looking out there for success, looking at people like me. But the ability to drive yourself to your full potential starts with greater self-awareness. It determines your ability to perform better, to lead more effectively. Unfortunately, we don't talk about it enough, and we don't see it in syllabus and curriculum. In one of my favorite books, Insight, by Tasha Eurich, she says that 95% of people think they are self-aware, but in reality, only 10 to 15% actually are. I found that this process of building businesses, driving change, being entrepreneurial, creating innovations in whatever work you do, is a lot more organic and subtle, and starts from a place that is not so business-like, not so academic. Personal mastery goes beyond competence and skills, beyond spirituality. It means approaching one's life as a creative work, living life from a creative as opposed to a reactive point of view. That creative work is the contribution you seek to make in this world within your lifetime. Let me begin at the beginning of my journey of building greater self-awareness and personal mastery. I must have been about 11 years old, sitting in a geography class, and geography wasn't one of my favorite subjects. And I was so bored. I remember looking right out the window into the sunlight, trying to blind myself. I was actually so bored. I must have been 11 years old when I first asked myself the question, what are you really doing? And what is this life thing really, really about? You see, it just wasn't adding up to me anymore. I would look back at primary school, and we worked our way through the system that was called primary school, and got to the end, and now I'm a year older, but I'm at the bottom of a new system called high school. And I'm supposed to work my way through that, and then I'm supposed to go to university, do that system, and then I'm supposed to join a large organization and do that for 20 years. And I started wondering, is my whole life about working systems? When do I begin to live more intentionally? When do I do me? And the single most important thing I have done in my life to bring me to the point where I'm in front of you today is to stay close to those questions and not be afraid of them, to try and have honest reflections with myself about what I truly want and what I think is happening right now. It is one of the hardest things to do, and it catches so many people out. My decision to be an entrepreneur had very little to do with business or wanting to be a boss or make lots of money or manage an organization. I remember as a child growing up, I assumed, or probably I was told, by people older than me, smarter than me, the adults, the smart ones, that, there's a structure called life, and all you've got to do is, flow through it, do what you're told, mean well, do the right things. You'll get to this place where you're happy and successful and fulfilled. And I started to get a sneaky suspicion that it doesn't quite work like that. And if I kept going on autopilot like this, I might not make it. By the time I was university graduation, I was relatively convinced that this wasn't true, that the adults hadn't figured out this whole life thing. And if I kept going on like this and not living more intentionally, I wasn't going to get anywhere. So the beginning of my journey in deciding to chart my own path and do the stuff I wanted to do was an entrepreneur. And it came from one simple and very, very powerful realization. I realized that everyone, no matter how confident they looked, no matter how smart they were, that everyone, and absolutely everyone, was winging it. Nobody had been to the end of life and come back to tell us how it was. Everyone had their ideas about what was supposed to happen in this lifetime and were just making that work. And I remember having dinner with my parents during one of the school holidays at UCT. And my parents are my north and south, they're everything to me. And I thought to myself, oh my God, they are winging it too. Steve Jobs says it best with the words, everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it, shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. Steve Jobs' words ring so true, because to think differently, to bring new ideas, to bring change, the things you're going to be tasked with wherever you go, you need a healthy dose of skepticism about how the world works and the systems that run it. They all seem so solid because we were born into it, and it was always there, secure and stable. But underneath it, if you really, really look closely, you will realize that most of our lives are made up. And they were made up by someone who was also winging it at some point. So I decided at graduation time, if everyone else is winging it, why can't I? My decision was to become an entrepreneur, but that is not to say that is everyone's choice. The point is that it was a time to live more deliberately, to take ownership of making my life work. I could no longer keep blaming my parents for my unhappiness or not getting what I wanted. I could no longer keep blaming other things outside of me. And for me at the time, I knew that the job options would either box me as a software developer or as a business consultant, because that's how large organizations were organized. And nowhere was I going to be able to do both, the technology and the business. I also knew that I was tired of working systems, and that the most important thing for me at the time was to be able to decide what I gave my time and attention to, because to me that determined who I would become in the next 10 years. So I gave up the lucrative job opportunities and guaranteed safety, and convinced my parents to continue to house and feed me for a few years while I continued to struggle like a student. Many people always ask me, how did you get through it over the years? And so often they're disappointed by my answer. There is a simple equation that has guided me throughout my life. Your unique contribution and hard work over time creates value that yields success. Your unique contribution plus hard work over time creates value that yields success. Most people believe that a little bit, but they also believe that other factors are more influential, like how rich your parents were, which school you went to, if you have some powerful or influential friends, if you know important people that give you contracts, if you were white, if you live in a white neighborhood, and the list goes on and on. Yes, there are many factors that play a role, but they were never deciding factors. Hard work alone is a noble part of that equation, but it is also not enough. Otherwise, domestic workers and miners would be the wealthiest people in this country. You must be in a position to make deliberate and intentional choices, to decide what your contribution is going to be. As educated young people with opportunities, you are in that position now. Now you are required to bring your whole self to the table, not just your intellect. It is also not enough to be a good person, to do what you're told, to try hard, to be on time every day, to mean well. At the end of the day, you could teach a dog to do that. It is not enough to succeed. Until you activate your will, until you believe in something, you have not even begun to live. And the sad reality is that you could spend your whole life, even get to UCT to this moment, living in autopilot. But it is the privilege and the necessity that arises with being human, with being a leader, that you can be, that you must be intentional. You must project your will and convictions into the world and spend your life making them true. You are some of the lucky few people in this country that are in a position to do so. So what does personal mastery and awareness or self-awareness really mean? When I talk about personal mastery and self-awareness, it can be broken down into two simple things. One, the first is to continually clarify what is important to you. It's easy to get busy in life, the humdrum of life, to keep going, moving from one urgent thing to another, one event to another, to occupy yourself with people and things. And you can actually keep going like this with only a vague or incomplete picture of what you really want. The second part of personal mastery is to continually learn to see your current reality more clearly and more accurately. Basically, I'm saying it's the ability to catch yourself when you're lying to yourself, when you're settling into counterproductive relationships or situations that don't serve you, when you're not facing the reality about what is going on in a work project, at home, in your personal life, because it's just too much, so much easier not to be honest with yourself, because nobody will know anyway, right? This juxtaposition of vision, what you want, and a clear picture of your current reality relative to this vision generates what Peter Senge calls creative tension. And it's a force that wants to bring these two things together because there's a natural tendency to seek resolution. The essence of personal mastery is learning how to generate and sustain that creative tension in our lives. It's kind of like a rubber band. When you stretch it on both sides, it gets that creative tension. On one side is your vision, what you really want, and on the other side is your creative or current reality. And this tension, you know, when I let this rubber band go, it can shoot quite far, right? And the harder I pull at it, the greater the tension. This creative tension is a universal law, much like gravity. And you won't get anywhere in life without activating this law. It should be obvious to us, like gravity is today, but we don't study it so much. And until Newton defined gravity, we also didn't know about it, even though it was all around us. Creative tension is indeed a law of life. And there are so many people, even older than you, that don't know this law. So you will doubt that it is true, even after I have told you. If there is no tension, the rubber band flops. Nothing moves, there's no propulsion, and you don't get very far. Why wouldn't there be tension? It could be from either one of the sides. Either you don't know what you want. You don't have a conviction in something yet that you want to make a reality. You don't want to figure out how to make up something, as Steve Jobs said. Or you were never conditioned in your upbringing to believe and to know that you were meant to choose. You were meant to manifest your reality into the world. If you have no driving goal and you're still living in autopilot, waiting for your real life to start happening, waiting for that day when you feel smart enough, old enough, rich enough, or whatever excuse your mind can come up with to excuse you from making a decision and investing in a choice. It is said that successful people know what they want, and not so successful people know what they don't want, but make the mistake of thinking it's the same thing. Knowing what you don't want, what you don't like, isn't actually an answer. It's a very passive form of living. Many people get into that mode where they think that because they know what they don't like or don't want, that you've actually made a decision, when it's not a decision at all. Like quitting your job because you don't like it, or stopping studying or not doing a project because you don't like it. It's as if happiness is supposed to fall on your lap. as if the world owes it to you to give you happiness and success, as if you have a right to be upset with the world for not giving you something that you want. And if you throw your arms up in the air enough times with enough frustration, you hope that the world will finally give you what you deserve. That if you complain enough, that if you express enough negativity about life, that the heavens will open and your life will switch into greatness because you know you're special. This flawed understanding of the world and life can trap so many people, for the universe owes you nothing. Knowing what you don't like and what you don't want and how unhappy you are remains your problem. You have been armed with a brain and something incredibly powerful and God-given: choice, the power to choose. It is the privilege of being human. And as soon as you have realized that you've chosen unhappiness, you have chosen dissatisfaction, then you can choose something else. And we often make these choices quietly, subconsciously, and blame it on others. The sooner you see that you have chosen your current situation, then you can choose otherwise and dream even bigger. The only forward momentum in life comes from knowing what you want. And neither the world, nor your parents, nor your friends can do that for you. The second reason that the rubber band may not have any tension is that on the other side, your ability to assess your current reality isn't as truthful as it should be. And this really comes down to an ability to have honest conversations with yourself and the people around you. Think about that friend who wants to be a writer, but hasn't written for pleasure in years and doesn't want to practice by taking the odd writing job here and there. Or the person who wants to build their own bank, but thinks it's below them to start at the bottom of the bank and learn about and do every menial job to learn how the whole system works. The person who is passionate about starting X business, but has never read past the first 10 pages of a Google search, hasn't read about the people who started businesses in that sector, doesn't read about the companies in that sector and what gaps they may be, and they're just waiting for someone to fund them. The human mind has an uncanny ability to lie to itself, and understanding of self is key to see past that. A foundation of daily and honest self-reflection and conversations about where you are in your current reality is the only way to build and improve. Truthful and humble reflection is the greatest power because there is no limit on a human being's ability to improve and excel in the long term. Hard work and your unique contribution over time creates value that yields success. I get that, and only now am I lucky to realize why it was so easy for me to believe that. It really comes down to my parents. My parents grew up in abject poverty, the kind of poverty where you walk to school in the winter without any shoes. They were the first to graduate in their respective families, and as a child I watched them excel in their professional careers as architect, as an electrical engineer. And they ran so many businesses, so many projects in their commitment to create the life they wanted for themselves and their children. And then in my early teens, I watched them lose everything they had built. And that could have been the end, and you may have never heard of me today. But lo and behold, I saw them get up and do it all over again. So by the time I was in your shoes, finishing university, I had seen my parents start with nothing and create everything twice over. So this equation for me was never a suggestion, a myth, a thought. It was one of the few truths I knew for sure. So today I want to be for you what my parents were for me. That hard work and excellence in your unique contribution over a sustained period of time creates value that yields success. It's been a long journey, and there haven't always been clarity in my life. that I am always on the right track. But one particular time, a few years ago, I was about to get on a flight from from Johannesburg to Gaborone. And I sat next to a gentleman, and we happened to start speaking. And he said, you know, my daughter's name is also Rapelang. And I said, that's wonderful. I've never met another Rapelang. I would love to meet her one day. And we chatted it some more. And eventually he tells me the story that before his 3-year-old daughter was born, his wife and him were looking for a name. They wanted a Tswana name, an unusual name, and they couldn't quite figure it out. Until one day they saw something on TV, and it was this amazing story about this amazing girl, he said. And the name, it was exactly what they had been looking for. And without even talking to each other, they knew that this was the name. And he was trying to remember the name of this person he saw on TV, and I'm like, is it Rapelang Rabana? And his eyes lit up, and my eyes lit up, and I thought the whole plane was about to come out of the sky, as I wondered how in this world does such a thing happen. A few months later, I met baby Rapelang, and it was for me one of the most amazing experiences of my life. To know that the things I have chosen to do and the life I have chosen to live could have had an influence so much further than I could have ever anticipated. Let me leave you with this quote by the Chinese philosopher Confucius. When we are born, we are given 2 lives. Your second life begins the day you realize you only have 1 life. Thank you very much.